Hold on this computer. Great. And hey, everyone. Welcome to our meetup. I put the link for the notes, the slides, and there's a GitHub repo. And then later we'll have a recording of the presentation up on that site as well if you need to refer to anything that we already covered. This is the WordPress Pittsburgh group, and we're talking about using the MVC pattern in your theme development. So I'd like to go around just a little bit to talk about what everybody uses, or maybe what you're doing now, or maybe why you came here, where you're from, how long you've been using WordPress, really anything you want to say if you just want to introduce yourself. So anybody want to go? Everybody's really shy.
Well, I'll start since I've already been talking. So I'm Jim, and I'm from outside Chicago. And as I said earlier, so I've somehow found the Pittsburgh group. Maybe it's through one of the, word camps, looking online. Anyway, I don't design themes, but it seemed like an interesting topic. So, and I'm retired, so I just sort of fool around with WordPress.
Nice. That's awesome. It's a good time for learning when you don't have to worry about being somewhere
or doing it for money or profit.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly, for sure. Yeah, well, thanks for joining us.
Hi, good morning. This is Jenny, and I live in Pittsburgh.
Awesome.
And yes, I just like your program last time. You invited Mark to talk about how to develop a website. They are very helpful, especially steps how to communicate with customers, how to set goals. Not fancy design, but aimed for business purpose goals. That's good. And I'm learning by myself, and I'm also helping others. So any opportunities to learn more could help me. And thanks for everything you have done for us. It is very good reading. You have done a great job. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, I think this is going to be good. I think a lot of times, maybe people are using a pre-existing theme or whatever. And for those of us who maybe want to code our own themes, like, learning how to do it the right way, I think is going to be really valuable. So I'm really excited about this. So Erik, I turned screen sharing on for you, I believe.
Indeed.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. And I also open the waiting room. So in case anybody comes, they should be able to come right in. And if you have a question at any point, well, maybe Erik, you can say, if they have questions, should they just ask?
Yeah, so since it's a light room, it's probably easier to field questions for you guys if you have them. Full disclosure, this is mildly high level theme development stuff, but I'm going to take questions twice. Once I'm going to explain everything that I'm using to make this happen when developing a theme, and then I'll do a demo, and then you guys can ask some more questions after I demo it to kind of make it easy for you.
Okay.
So, oh, look, it works. Okay, so basically this is integrating MVC pattern into WordPress theme development. So I'm gonna explain what MVC is and why that is useful when developing a theme to keep your code clean and manageable for, if you're working with other developers or even for yourself for your own sanity. But just to introduce myself first. So I've been developing professionally since 2013, roughly. Owned my own business for a while, but then I don't know, managing clients wasn't the funnest thing for me. So now I am a senior software engineer for Nearby Creative. I don't do a ton of WordPress work anymore, to be honest. I do it for my side work. Now I do a lot of frameworks and Node development, React, things of that nature. I have worked with some bigger companies during my freelance time. If you live in Pittsburgh, you would know like Duquesne Light, Mark USA is a bigger ad agency. There's this, smart learning company, Cognizant, that I work with, and another small little dev firm, Shift Collaborative, that I worked with. So I've dabbled in quite a few different things over the past few years to land to where I'm at now. So couple things to be familiar with this particular meetup and what I'm going over. So CLIs, command line interface. So if you have like a Mac, that'd be a terminal. If you're on Windows, that'd be something like PowerShell. That's basically just where you type things in and make it happen. It's very lightweight programming tool for your computer. Also Composer, that is a package manager for PHP, so you can install things easily. Object-oriented programming, so that is using classes and PHP to where you can organize your code to make it reusable. I'll talk more about that in a little bit as well. Custom theme development helps if you know that, of course, PHP. I have Blade on here, which is a PHP kind of template. So instead of using regular HTML files, it's a little bit different and unique. It's not necessary to know it unless you're using the same theme that I've chosen for the demo. You can implement the same practices that I'm using in your own custom theme and not use Blade. But for this instance, knowing Blade kind of helps a little bit, but it's not a requirement. So what is MVC first? So MVC stands for Model View Controller. The model is your database connection layer. So what that means is instead of writing MySQL statements to query a database, basically you use code and it will pull in the data that you're querying for. So I'm going to demo that a little bit later and how the code looks, but it's far more convenient to use a class in order to communicate with your database versus writing out MySQL statements, because it's easier to change the code that you want in order to query different things, to do join statements, to get multiple levels of data, also to manipulate the data as well, versus all the various things you have to do if you just did MySQL statements. The view is the presentation layer. So for those familiar with how WordPress's templating system works, that'd be like the front page template or the single template, page template. They do a decent job at that. Now, in this particular theme that I've chosen for the presentation, that's where Blade comes in. That's what their view layer is. And I'll show how that one is a little bit different whenever I go over some of those codes. Now, the controller aspect is something that WordPress doesn't really have, and that's what makes things a lot more clean in your code. The controller is basically the request layer. So whenever someone hits a URL, say, I don't know, whatever your page is called, and they go there in your code, if you ever go into WordPress themes, you'll see some people who have in their view a whole bunch of PHP at the top and then the design part underneath with HTML. That gets a little messy to debug and also to follow someone's logic. Now, a controller is essentially a class that passes in the data to your view. So all you're going to have in your view is just your HTML and then available variables for you to just place that data wherever you want. So it's a much cleaner way in order to manage your theme. So that's what MVC is. Now, going over some of the various tools that I have implemented in here that I'm going to demo to you momentarily. First tool is called Phinx. So Phinx is slightly outside of the MVC pattern, but what it's used for is to create your tables in your database. Now, WordPress does have, the standard ones that it comes with. And the use case for this is for non-standard WordPress uses. So for me, majority of the time with a lot of the WordPress sites that I work on now, they are outside of the normal use cases for WordPress, where a custom post type just won't do because of the type of data that I have to save. Be it like a recent project I was working on where we have to display venues and I can't save the venue data logically in either the post metadata or as a custom post type. So what Phinx does, it creates tables for me. All I have to do is write it out in code and then it manages it. So if I have other developers, especially, and they're doing local development, all they have to do is pull down the latest repo, run a line of code, and then it will automatically make the new tables for them. The nice thing about this is if you mess up, it has a rollback feature where I can just go back, undo the table that just got created, fix whatever I messed up, and then migrate it again. So it's a lot easier than just doing MySQL statements where I'd have to delete the table, then write the statement again, run it, make sure that works. That didn't work, delete the table, and so on and so forth. Now, another thing that this comes with is something called seeding. So for people who have tested, whenever you're testing your WordPress site, you need fake data in there. There's plugins that you can get to kind of make spoof posts or pages or things like that. But that just requires another plugin and some setup. So in Phinx, you can do something called seeding, which is nice. So you can create a file and just type in the stuff that you need, and it'll automatically create however many posts that you want right there in the code. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be fake data either. So in one of the projects that I'm currently using, we're using the seeder to populate real data. And that's how we'll update the client's database if it's massive changes. So they'll just give us like a CSV file or something. I'll put that in one folder, create a seeder for it. It'll read from that CSV and populate their database all in one swing. So I don't have to manually sit there and type things in for them. They don't have to do it, or I don't have to build like an upload tool for them. It's very easy, repeatable, and it saves a ton of time for myself and other developers as well, so that we don't have to, drive ourselves crazy putting data in for clients, especially the stuff that we don't necessarily understand can mess up. The client gives us a well-formatted CSV, we can just repeat the process over and over again. The next tool that I'm using inside of this presentation today is called Eloquent. Eloquent is a library inside of a PHP framework called Laravel. Laravel is much different than how WordPress works. It's more for highly customized, like website development. If you're making, I don't know. Anybody who doesn't want to use WordPress and wants something custom, generally is what I put them on. Now, what is Eloquent? Eloquent is an ORM. It's an object relational mapper. So that's where the model part comes from, the MVC. So basically, this creates classes, so it'd be a file. So if I have a table called, let's use the WP post table, right? I would create a file called posts, and then I would use Eloquent, and it would attach directly to the post table in the database. And I can query directly off of it using code. And that's what Eloquent does. It can also create the relationships between tables as well. So I don't know if you guys ever dove into the WordPress database. They don't really create the relations if you look at the relationship model of the database. Like, we know they're there, but they didn't really put it in. So if I printed out a ERD, it would show me all the relationships. This will create those. So I can take the post table and then create another file for post meta, and then tell them that they're related. And then I can tell this thing to always pull in metadata. Every single time I query for something, it would pull in the metadata automatically. So I don't have to do the get post meta function to go pull things. This will just do it, and then I can just use it directly in the object that was created here. Now, also what these allow you to do is keep your code dry. So don't repeat yourself. So if you have to do little dumb things over and over again, like say you have an easy example with someone's name, right? So if you're not using the regular user table, where I think it does create full name in display options, but say it didn't, and you have one column for first name and one column for last name, and you continually have to concatenate those together to make their full name. Well, instead of doing that 1,000 times in different files, inside of your class for your ORM, you can just create one method, be like a function, and that would create the full name, and then you just call that over and over and over again when you're querying the database, and it will automatically give you a first name, or full name, I should say. Now, that's a very small example, but you can use it for creating a full address. You can use it for creating anything that you want that you have to do repetitively, instead of doing it, repeating yourself in the code over and over and over again, which gets mundane, because what happens is if you need to change one thing, you have to change it in all places instead of just one spot. So that will make life so much easier for you. So the last thing that I'm using in this, which isn't necessarily part of the MVC portion of it, but it's good for creating fake data. The tool is ironically called Faker. So what it does is it literally creates fake data for you. So whenever you're doing like fake posts, instead of having to come up with a title and that title being repeated, this thing will generate a title for you. It'll generate paragraphs, it'll generate phone numbers, addresses, a number of different types of information this thing will create for you. and then it'll just be inserted into your post with the seeder. It's very easy to use. It's another thing that can be installed via Composer. And I really appreciate this thing whenever I need to just test layouts and I don't feel like going to make my own posts. So these are the tools that I'm using in here. And that's just the basic overview of it before I hop into the actual demo of it. So at this point, if you guys have any questions about the things that I just went over, feel free to ask. And then I will demo how all these things work.
I just had a quick question. You said about creating the relationships. So that would be a situation then where you wouldn't have any orphan post meta. Like WordPress will leave orphan post meta because there's no actual relationship there.
So that's a little bit different, right?
Okay.
So say, because you're talking about like you delete a post or something like that, and then it'll leave the, So that's a problem with WordPress in general because it doesn't create relationships in the database. So what this does, it will pull in the data because you're telling it there's a relationship. Now it won't delete things. Like if you go delete a post via the normal WordPress functionality, that's still WordPress. It's not going to go through Eloquent. Okay. So it's not going to delete it. However, this is outside of this. You can create those relationships so that if you do delete a post, it will delete all the post meta that is there. Yeah. But that's a database manipulation thing. You can actually do that with Phinx if you wanted to create the relationships. So then what would end up happening is if you used like any MySQL tool, you can go look at the ERD and then you'll finally see all the relationships that should be there that just aren't that aren't created right now.
Okay.
Long-winded answer.
All good.
Any other questions before I do the demo? Cool. All right. So drop this down. All right. So first thing I want to show, I got to get everybody's out of the way there. All right. So I'm going to talk about Phinx first. So this is the thing that I've been working with here. So, well, actually, let me shrink this back down. So Phinx basically runs off of what's called a YAML file. And this is my setup here. So when I come into this theme, and this is all inside that repo. So I have a folder here called migrations and seeder over here on the right. And this is my YAML file. So this is just a variable saying the config directory is wherever this file is located. And then this is the path to where everything is. So it's clear, database, migration, seeder, there it is. So then you have environments. So the nice thing about this is if you run this locally, you can have a development environment like I have here. And this is where I'm seeding my local dev environment. Or if I need to make changes to production, I can put all the production credentials here and then run it directly on the production database. So depending upon what environment I can have settings for it, and then boom, it'll just handle everything that I need to do. And that's how I tend to seed or manipulate one of my clients' databases whenever they give us stuff. I just hop on my computer, tell it what connection I want to use, and then boom, it handles all the data for me. So an example of a migration file. This would be one right here. So it's a little bit more straightforward than just writing out MySQL because it's technically easier to read. So here, it only has one file, or one method, I should say, called change. And here, I'm calling the WordPress database object, and I'm getting the prefix in case it's not the regular WP underscore and it's something different. And then I put whatever the new name of the table is. And then this thing will create the table for me. So for instance, over here, I have WP venues, which is what this thing did. And here are all the tables. And I already seeded this with data for the demo, but you can see how I have all these columns that were all defined here. And then you can tell it whatever type of data it is, strings, booleans, true or false. You can do large text, you can do medium text, enums, date, time. You can tell it what needs to be unique. Like in this instance, I have the guide needs to be unique, which is right here. So that makes sure that, there's not duplicates, kind of like an index. Now, creating one of these files is fairly simple. So this is where the CLI thing comes in. So this dark window right here is my CLI. So whenever you use Composer, it creates this folder here called vendor. And that's where everything is stored. Now, this is never submitted into a repo because it will be regenerated easily. So what I'm going to do is hop in here and go to bin, Phinx, and then I am going to create a migration just to, give you guys an example. Create new table. All right, so now if I click again, a new file just showed up right there. Go away. There we go. So here's my new file that was just created. Create new table is what I typed in. It has the change and it's all empty. So just for argument's sake, I'm going to take everything that was right here. So not to retype a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm just going to change the name of the table. We're going to call it something else. And I definitely need this or it will fail. And I need that. Okay. So now what this will do is we'll create a table called something else. And to create that, instead of running create down here, all I will do now is just type migrate. Simple. Hit that, boom. Migrating, migrated. So if I come back to here and I just refresh this real quick, boom, WP something else is now here. And it's that easy to create new databases. So now if I double click this, I have a nice little empty database. I can look at the properties and see all the things that I created. Now, what if I messed up, right? I can just come here, type rollback. All right, reverted. Come back here. Let me close this because it's gone technically. Refresh. It is gone. So it's that easy to create a table and then remove the exact same table to update whatever it is that you need to. So I can continue that process forever until I get it right. Now, if I keep doing rollback, it would essentially keep getting rid of all of the previous database structures that I have added. So if I did rollback again, it would get rid of that other table that I had shown you guys. So that in essence is what Phinx does. It just is a nice, simple, easy way to manage your database without writing MySQL statements inside of your theme to check if a table exists, and if it doesn't exist, then make the table. Now, of course, you don't need this in all use cases. If you're just doing like a regular blog site, this would be overkill. But if you're doing something that's a little bit more unique in particular, where you do need your own custom tables and things of that nature, this thing comes in handy. It's an amazing tool. Now, to continue on the Phinx path, seeding. So over here, I have the seeder folder. So what I have here is basically the structure of a regular post. And I have this factory thing here is for Faker. So up here, you see I have use Faker factory. And I create a Faker object, and then I just create stuff. So here, post title, it's Faker words, and I want 8 words as text. I have a date. Only interesting thing about me doing it this way is whenever I create the post, technically I could have a post that was created in 1970, which, whatever, makes it interesting. Down here for post content, we have paragraphs. I asked for 12 paragraphs. And then here I have a random element, and it's choosing out of one of 2 things. Either it's going to create a post or a page, right? So only 2 options that we really have for post types right now, unless I create new ones. If I create new post types, I can add them here. So let me log into my test site real quick, and hopefully I remember. All right. So right now I do have test things in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move those trash real quick, just to show you how this works. So right now I have no posts. So what I'm going to do now is using Phinx again, we're going to do seed run, and I want to do post seeder. So basically all it is I'm telling it to seed, I'm telling it to run a seed, and I'm telling it to choose this particular seeder, and then it will run this data for me. It's pretty quick. See, it started saying seating, seated under a second. So if I come back here, refresh this, boom. So now I have a whole bunch of fake stuff with a bunch of random dates created, look, 86, 94, 85. I could have did today's date, but you know, whatever. Just to prove a point, that's how it works. So as you can see, it's using lorem ipsum for titles. If I enter this, then there's the paragraphs that I asked it to create. And it's just an easy way to quickly create posts. Now I could go steps further and add like featured images and things like that. It'd be a couple more steps that I'd have to do to get that in there, but that's essentially how this thing works. And I can use this to fake anything I want or to add, real data. So this was inside of this Cedar file. It's probably the first example of one of the models that I have. So right here, you just see the word post, insert, and then posts. This is a model, and I'm gonna be explaining models right after this. So basically, the way that I'm doing this is post is an array, and I'm just adding all these here in the array, and I created 20 of them. So that's what this loop here is doing. And then as I get this array with 20 items in it with all this various data, I just do post insert that array, and then it created all that for me in one swing. So I didn't have to use, WordPress's was a WP insert. I didn't have to write some MySQL statement. It's all right here for me. So before I go into models, did anybody have any questions about the Cedar Phinx? I know that was a lot and it's kind of technical, but
my question is, okay, this is Phinx. This is the first time I'm coming across Phinx. So yeah, I really don't know what it does. I know this was something for WordPress, right? That's what I was.
So Phinx can be used in anything. It's not necessarily a WordPress thing. So Phinx is a migration tool. Basically, it is a way for you to manipulate your database directly and have a record of it. So, normally you would, in old times, create a table just via MySQL statement. This makes it programmable and trackable. So you can see your entire migration like this. This is the record of it. And then if somebody made this and then did a migration and committed it to the database, I know who did it. I can track that. So it's much easier to manage database, especially with a team. But this can be used in any PHP program that you create, not necessarily WordPress.
Okay. So I just go on Google and download it.
You can use Composer to download it. So it's in GitHub. So I know it is in the WordPress, in this meetup in the description, but I'll also put it in the README here. If I go to phinx.org.
Okay.
So phinx.org. This is their website. So if I just view it on GitHub, basically it gives you installation instructions right here. So all it is you do, well, this is if you had the Composer far file. Actually, it's right. It's in here somewhere. Oh, here it is. All right. This right there. That's how you would install
it. You're going to share this video, right?
Yes. Yeah. We're recording now. We'll upload it after the meetup today, and it'll be on the page that I put in the notes. And the page that I put in the notes there, or in the chat rather, also does have the GitHub repo link and the slides link too. So yeah, everything will be there.
Sorry, for Rennie, I'm going to go outside this topic. Rennie, I know I've seen your other classes. If I'm right. The intro to Kubernetes, I missed that too. So it'd be helpful if I can get a video. Sorry about that.
Yeah, just chat me.
Intro to.
Yeah,
okay,
send me a
I should
chat.
just chat your meetup.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
You're good.
Sorry, boss.
Oh, you're good. All right, so that is Phinx. So now the next thing I want to talk about after speaking about the models is models. So come on. Why is this here? So I have a black box that is stuck for some reason. Hold on, let me see if I can get rid of that. All right, apparently it doesn't want to go away, which shouldn't impede anything. So basically a model, what I have here, let me make this bigger and shrink that. So what I have here is a model, and this is for that venues table that I created. So basically all I'm doing is telling it to interact with the venues table. That's it, super direct. Now up here, you don't have to do this, I do this so that I create a document with every property that this thing can have. So when I'm calling this model, it knows that these exist on there instead of saying it doesn't, my ID will know that this exists on here versus saying that it doesn't exist. Now for other examples, I have a post one here too. So whenever I was saying I can create relationships earlier with other models, my example was posts versus post meta. So here is my post table. It using posts, I tell it to do it right there. Now here's where you define relationships. So I have a meta method here, and I'm telling it has many post metas on post ID versus the ID of this table. So what that means to this is that, hey, there's another model here called post meta, which is right there. And this one speaks to the post meta table. And it's saying that this should have a number of records in there that it can be identified by the post ID off of its ID. So the foreign key is post ID and post meta, and the primary key on this table is ID, and that's how you match them. So what happens is if I do a query and tell it that I want meta returned, all I have to do is say, you know, hey, do this query and return meta. I don't have to be specific. I just say return meta. What will happen is it'll bring back every piece of metadata associated with this. And then I can do with it what I want. It'll be in an array format, and then I can just manipulate it as I see fit. And the same thing with user here. So every post has a post author, which is associated by the user's ID. And this will bring back the one user that is associated to the post or page or whatever the post type is. And then you'll always have that user's data every time. But to go over a couple other pieces that are in here that you may see. So like guarded, what this attribute basically means is, hey, whatever's in here, like if I put post title, now if I do an insert or try to save with this, you can't save anything to post title. So you can stop this thing from saving to particular fields. Now, if I leave this empty as I did before, this means everything's open, and then I can save to any field in that database. So it's kind of nice to prevent accidents in that situation, to where maybe there's a default value in a field and it shouldn't be changed via this method, then it's guarded. Timestamps, you know, if you want to do timestamps on there, basically created and modified. Right now I have false because the way WordPress does it is different than how this does. Now, to give an example of how I use models, this will get me go over to one of the controllers, which I'll explain in a minute. But here, for those custom venues that I have, I call them locations. And down here, right here, here it is, I have this. This simple statement right here basically says, go find that WP venues table that I created earlier, where guide matches guide, and get the first one. So it's that simple, and it'll just return an object. No long MySQL statements, nothing. It's just a simple piece of code that will return every piece of data regarding this guide that I'm sending. So the where statement can be like any other MySQL where statement. It could be equals, it could be greater than, it can be likes, any of those where statements that you're used to in MySQL can be entered here just in programmatic format. So if I wanted to do less than, I would just put this here and then say, I mean, it doesn't make sense on a string, but less than, or I can do greater than, not equal to, whatever I want to put in here, it will allow it as long as it's a valid condition. So models are pretty straightforward in that sense. I know that where is this one? So for instance, had brought up keeping your code dry with doing repetitive things. So for venues, for instance, on that table, I can look at, so I can look at a number of different things and say I wanted to merge them together, right? Say I wanted to take address and city. So instead of calling these individually all the time, for instance, what I could do is this. I could say public function get, I don't know, whatever I want to call it, full address attribute. So now what will happen is, so if I do attributes, address one was one column, then I come here and do attributes and city. Basically, all this does is combines that address one column and city, and it does it every single time I call full address. I never have to call these separately ever again if I want full address, just by doing this simple line right here. And it'll work every single time. And then if I ever need to change it, say I didn't want address one anymore, I wanted address two, I just come here and change that, and it changes it everywhere in the site that I use this. It makes life much simpler for you whenever you do things in this method versus, hey, you know, I'm just going to call these separately in every single place that I need them. And then, oops, they want me to, you know, change city to state now. And now I need to go to all those places, changing city from state, where I can just come here and change it once and then it's changed everywhere. So that is one of the big benefits of using these models. Now, there's a number of other use cases that you can use this for, where you manipulate the data right before you save it. There's other, what these are called are mutators or accessors, I'm sorry. There's other accessors you can use to, you know, create these type of data concatenations, whatever you can come up with, you can keep doing it. But these are just some of the base uses of a model. So before I go and show how this works inside of a controller with a view, do you guys have any questions about models? I know this is high level stuff, but try. Everybody's good on models? No questions? Okay. So the next thing is a controller. So a controller basically works in conjunction with your view. So I have my locations that I made before, that locations table. So that is a custom permalink essentially. So every time that anyone goes to the website name /locations / it will immediately come here into this controller here. And this controller will automatically send everything to my location.blade. Or if you don't use Blade, it will just be location.php. So to explain what this does, so I have my constructor here, basically whenever the controller is initiated, and I tell it to get the query from WordPress. It's called location guide in this instance, and it gets me a string. Now this string is, let's see here, this. So here's an example, WP Meetup test, here's locations. This is what I'm getting back right here. I'm getting all of this. So locations, Abbey, Resort, all that jazz. So what it's going to match against is in this database, WP Venues, guide right here. It's going to match that exact string right there. So that's how I know what I'm getting. So that's what this is. So this is that venues model where guide equals that string that's coming from the URL, and I want the first one. And then I'm assigning it to this attribute and the controller. So then before it does anything, before it sends any data to the view, I need to check if that even exists. Because what if somebody put in anything and then, you know, it wasn't a real thing? I don't want to send them to the view location. I'd rather show them a 404 page like WordPress generally would. So what I do here is say, hey, does this exist? No. Okay, well, set the query to 404 and change the header to 404 so that they know whatever they entered is not a real thing. Now, I have these public functions here. So in Sage, which is this theme that I'm using, their controller system, any of these functions, public functions, become a variable in your view. So error 404 will be a variable that is acceptable for me to use over there. And basically I'm saying is, hey, return this location. So if it does not exist, that means 404 is true and do not display anything. And then down here, I'm just returning the location as it was found. So it's either going to be null or it's going to be something. So here is the location blade, and I kept it very simple. So here it's saying if it is not 404, and this is blade, and I'll explain this in a second, but it's not necessarily something you have to use if you don't want to. So basically what I'm saying here is if this is not 404, display the location name. If it's, if it is a 404 page, then I'm displaying 404. So basically what's happening here is, since this is not 404, it is displaying the name of this location. So over here, as you can see, it just says name. And then here is my column over here that says name, Abbey Resort. And then boom, there's that text just displayed to me. Now I have access to all of this data now that it has been found by my model, and I can display any of it. So for instance, what was the thing that I made over here? Full address, make sure I spelled it right, because I do that from time to time. I can also say, hey, give me full underscore address. Save that. Boom. I should have put a space there, but it is this right here. There's my full address. There's the address, and then I think I put the city, Fontana. They are combined. And I can put whatever I want here. If I want to wrap that in strong, now I can do that. If that's what I want, I don't want to do it there. Let's do it over here. Like a smart person. Oops. So if I wrap this in strong so it can be seen the difference between them, boom, all right, there it is. And I can use this for every piece of data on there to start making my, my template out. Now this template looks weird because this is Blade, and Blade you don't necessarily have to use, but in this instance, kind of resembles SAS if you've ever used that with the @ symbol before everything. So you can have conditions like @if instead of regular PHP, we have to wrap it in PHP start tags. You would just do @if and then put your variable in. Blade, it gets it from using these blade symbols here to render. So like 2 of these brackets means echo. And then it prints out location name. Now, when I said the variables that were accessible to me from these public functions like error, location, here they are here, location and error. And I can do this forever. I can just keep on making these public functions to manipulate whatever data I want, return it, and then it will be available to me over here as a variable. So why do this is the question, right? So say I need to do all this data manipulation in a template. A lot of people would have it up here at the top. So basically what I see in a ton of themes is someone doing something like this and then writing all their logic up here at the top and then using the variables down here. So if somebody needs to debug this, it gets a little messy because you have a giant block of code at the top of your template, which isn't good for anybody to try to figure out. Versus if you are creating your same variables in a controller, then it's segmented. So you can say, hey, this one variable, here's the code for here that's making that one happen. All right, for the next one, I need to do code logic here. Let me do a bunch of stuff there. So it's easier for you to manage your code whenever it's coming from a controller versus if you have it coming from your template where you have a whole bunch of stuff at the top that for someone who's coming in to maybe, change the code after you is going to have a hard time reading because it's just a jumbled block of stuff. No one likes that. So this right here makes it much easier for you. So that's basically how controllers work in conjunction with a view. You have any questions about that?
Hi, Eric. My name is Miranda. I have a question. I jumped in late, so maybe the reason why I have this question is because I missed it earlier. But how did you get? I noticed in your file where you were rendering out using Blade, the location.blade.php. At the top, you had extends layouts.apps. What does that piece do?
So basically what extends does, you know how WordPress generally has, includes head in their template files?
Yeah.
So that's a much cleaner version of that, just in Blade format. So if I go here to this resource and then I go to views, and I don't know why you just opened, and I go to layouts. So this is what it's referencing. So extends layouts app. It knows that views is the directory. So here's layouts and then here's app. So if I enter here, this is what it's using. Now this is messy because I didn't write this, but basically if I separate this out, so it makes more sense to be able to be read. So if you put spaces and stuff, it makes life so much easier.
Sure.
All right, so here we go. So right here where it says yield content, whenever I say extends at layouts app, is going to pull this, and then you have this section right here that says content. Everything in between this section start and section end automatically gets put here within this main HTML tag.
Oh,
now, you also have all the rest of your stuff. So you have like include partials head. So if I go include, it's going to look at partials, and then it's going to go to head right here. That's including this stuff, your usual HTML head tag. And then there's your WP head. There's the stuff for responsiveness with the viewport, you know, other meta stuff. And that's automatically being pulled in for you from this one. Partials header, same thing. If I come here, here's a banner. That's automatically being included every time. So it kind of segments it out even more than how WordPress generally does it. But this is just easier to manage because you can create multiple layouts. It doesn't necessarily have to be this one. So say you're the client who wants kind of marketing page. I have a lot of people who ask me for a page that doesn't have a header, like no navigation, no footer, nothing, just a white page for them to create with like Visual Composer or Elementor or something. You can just create a new layout that doesn't have the navigation in it or anything. Create a page template, and then just use that one instead of this regular app. So it makes life a little bit easier because you can pick and choose what you want to use when.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about how like the controller works or how it was working in conjunction with the model that I was using, or was that fairly straightforward? Fairly straightforward. So the only thing that I kind of glanced over or glossed over, I should say, was how to even make your models work with your theme. So you have to establish a connection for your models. Kind of forgot to say that. So in your theme, you can do this in the function folder or function file or any other file that's called before or called initially with your theme. So right here, this is all it takes is to get a model system started. You just need to pass in the variables that WordPress already has for your database connection. So they have a class called capsule, and this is all in the documentation for Eloquent. You just say, hey, I want to add a connection. You can add multiple connections. It's going to be MySQL. Since in your WP config file, there are constants that are created, like DB host, name, user, password. You just pass all that stuff in there and then call these methods here, set as global, and boot Eloquent, and then you're good. You don't have to do anything else. You can create all of the models that you want afterwards, and you'll automatically have your connection to the database, and you can manipulate it as you see fit. So they make this part really easy. So this is kind of like a super high level overview of all these things. There's much deeper things that you can get into with using controllers, models, and views. But this is kind of the base level version of it without getting into too much craziness. The nice thing is you don't have to use like the Sage theme that I'm doing this example with. For instance, in the one client site that I'm using a 100% custom theme with a custom controller. Controllers can be made however you want. You don't necessarily have to use a system that already has a built-in. Although convenient, you can create your own controller system that works however you want. So you're not limited to just what somebody else already did, if that makes sense.
Would you still use the WP config if you're calling your database name, username, and password in this file?
You would have to, because WordPress still needs to have its connection.
Okay.
So this doesn't replace how WordPress dashboard works, where you're creating your posts and all that jazz. It's not using these models. This is only isolated to your theme. So you would still need to use a WP config file if you're using a standard WordPress installation, that is.
Okay.
In non-standard ones like Bedrock, for instance, it still technically has WP config, but it uses an environment file, which I am more in favor of. But that's a whole another conversation. And you can't use that everywhere. Like if you're a WP Engine fan, you can't use Bedrock there. They won't be happy about that. But any time that I can make a more secure version of WordPress, I'm all for it. It just all depends on where you're putting your site at. Any other questions on how to set certain things up? Doesn't even necessarily have to be with everything I covered. If you have questions about like this IDE that I'm using or any other tool, I'm happy to field all questions. Or is everyone good?
Just a general question, a little bit outside this. Erik, what do you do for a living?
I am a senior software engineer for Nearby Creative. I do mostly WordPress stuff on the side now, but I work in a lot of web applications, be it written in Node or React, or frameworks in PHP such as Laravel or Cake or things of that nature. I deal with a lot of big data that's written in either like Mongo, MySQL, Postgres, things of that nature, and a lot of AWS stuff. So like Lambda functions, SCS.
That's exactly where I'm going. When you mentioned MongoDB, I was trying to get you to AWS. So is there a possibility I have a one-on-one session with you? Because I'm having some challenges with projects. I'm sure you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I can do my best to see what your problem is and answer that for you. If you're doing things in AWS, as you're probably aware, AWS is a beast. There's 8,000 different services that they have. Yeah, they have a ton. So depending upon which ones you're using, I could probably help you with that one, especially if it's like an EC2 instance or some of the database stuff. I could probably help you figure that out.
It's not. It's I understand the concepts. I haven't done the basics. I just need a project that I can work on and be able to elaborate my skills. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. No better way to work on your skills than just have something set up to go tinker with. So yeah, I can help you out with that. That's no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can give everybody my contact information. Actually, let me just put the slide up that has that on there. Well, actually, I think Renee's putting this slide out. Right there at the bottom is my email address for anybody who wants to email me any type of questions about WordPress theme development or development in general. Right there at the bottom, I think she has the PDF.
Yeah, so I put those up on the site already, so those are both there.
Yeah, so any like development questions, you guys can just email me. Anything JavaScript, PHP related, I can help you. Some AWS stuff starts getting a little too crazy, like if you're asking me Python or Java questions, I can't help you. But for all the rest of the things, yeah.
Yeah, I could work with Java. That's fine. I mean, most of the AWS commands are written in JSON language anyway, so.
No problems. Anybody else have any questions or things that they're curious about? Small room. But.
looked at the GitHub file that you linked to, or that was provided on the WordPress site. And in it, for your Meetup example, would you say the links you provided for Sage, Laravel, Phinx, Baker, and Symfony, those are all good places to like read about to get a better understanding of everything you showed today?
Yes, so those have the full explanations on how all these tools work. I just gave you the kind of the quick and dirty, the lightweight versions. I mean, these are extremely powerful tools and everything you can do. So Phinx has all of its documentations and everything you can do there. Laravel is extensive because that documentation extends past just its Eloquent tool. So if you kind of stay on the URL that I gave you, it'll kind of make sense. What else is in there? Faker, that one's straightforward. Those are good places to start. Now, I don't know if you plan on using Sage in the future, like with how I have it in the repo, or if you create your own themes from scratch and want to implement this stuff. There are certain techniques that you would need to do to get these implemented in your own theme, like the controller thing, especially if you want to do your own controller. There are libraries that you can use to implement into your site, but if you want to create your own controller, it's a little bit different. So if you ever had questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. I have no problem explaining how I did it in my own theme to create a controller.
That's wonderful, thank you. And then another question I had was, are there any type of code editors that would not work with these platforms? Like,
you can use any code editor that you want. It just depends on how sophisticated it is, right?
Okay.
And if it will be able to pick up on how this works. Like what code editor do you use?
Visual Studio Code.
So Visual Studio Code's not bad. I don't mind it. Mainly, I mean, it's free and you can add all the extensions in the world. I use PHP Storm. That thing is amazing. So I don't know how I would function without it at this point, especially with some of the projects that I'm on. Have you installed like Xdebug in your, what's it called? Visual Studio Code?
Have I installed what in it?
Xdebug?
I don't think that I have.
Okay, so I'll give this demo real quick in a current project that I'm using, so you guys will kind of see. You guys had a debug session before, right, Renee?
I actually can't remember. I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't do a lot of meetups last year. Other people ran the meetups last year. I had some personal things. And before that, I can't remember. It was a long time ago.
I don't think we have had something like that in a while.
Okay. So let me switch themes real quick. So in one of the projects that I work in, I had to work with multiple developers and they don't code the same way that I do. So I have to debug their stuff a lot and it's annoying. But basically there is this tool called Xdebug. And what it does is it lets me figure out when things are broken by looking at how things are being called. So for instance, this is similar to that location controller that I was showing earlier. It's just my version. So say for instance, I need to figure out what is going on. So let me just set a little breakpoint here. So I have this little red dot, that's a breakpoint. First, let me make sure my connection is not going to their live site because that will take forever. And I want my local database. All right. So what I'm going to do is now navigate to PHP. Okay, that should work. All right. I'll give this a second to load up, which is painfully slow for the site because it has so much data. But basically what's going to happen here once this works is whenever the code hits this point, it's going to stop. And then I'll be able to see every piece of data that is available at this current point in the code. And that is useful because whenever I break stuff, I'll be able to figure out what I messed up. And normally it's never syntax, right? It's always logic wherever you mess things up. Actually, probably a faster way for me to demo this since this is taking forever. Oh, there it goes. All right. I was wondering when it was going to work. So now the site isn't going to load anymore because it's waiting for the code to finish because I stopped it. So at this point, whenever it's calling my method get location, I know that it's looking for this. This is what the value of guide is right there. So this would let me know maybe I messed up with passing data in. Maybe this isn't trimmed right. That's not the case, then I can just step over it and see what was retrieved. So now, oh, see, I know this is going to break. So right now it's null. But I do have a condition that says if null, do the redirect. So I'm going to step in, see what happens next. All right, so it's going to do this new query here. Step over that one. Redirect is also null. So that means I should get a 404 page now. So it's going to go and return null, and then the null is going to send them to a 404 page, but it at least lets me know what's happening. But it gives me all these values right here. So like if I need to know what the constants are set at for the entire site, I have all those values here. If I need to know what global variables are, I got all that stuff here. I can see the path that was even taken to get here. So like I know that get location was called back instruct here by clicking that. I know this was called from template filtering somewhere else. So whenever you're getting into, my point is, whenever you're getting into theme development like this, you need to have a tool like this to make life easier, because otherwise you'll be using bare dump statements until you're blue in the face, and then that's never fun. But this, you can debug your whole script in one sitting instead of saying, hey, maybe it's broke here, bare dump, you know? So I have set Xdebug up in Visual Studio Code before. So if you ever have questions about that, I can help you, depending upon what your local development environment is set up like.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yep, no problem. Any other questions or development questions or tool questions? No. All right. Well, that's oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask if you had any more or not.
No, I have nothing else. I've went through everything.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so nobody else has any last questions? And Erik's, like he mentioned, his email address, and he also had his LinkedIn there too, on one of the slides, and those slides are up on the site right now, and then the video will be up in a couple hours probably if you missed the beginning and want to catch that too. We don't have any meetups scheduled, but there is one in process. It's supposed to be April 7th. April 7th is a Wednesday from, I think, 7 to 9. And that's going to be geared more towards freelancers. We're going to talk about onboarding processes. It is a collaborative meetup with the other Pennsylvania WordPress meetups. We're doing kind of like a panel of meetups. And we're always looking for new speakers and ideas on what people want to learn about. So if there's something specific that you want to learn about, we can try to find a speaker for that. Or if you are interested in speaking, that is awesome too. So just let me know. You can just, I don't know, you can tweet maybe, or I'm trying to think how yeah, there's a contact form at the bottom of the website. So you can fill that out and let us know. So thank you so much, Erik. I think this was really valuable. A lot of neat stuff.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'm gonna, since I missed the beginning part, watch the video. Go back and watch it again.
Sorry, what did you say the contact for Erik was?
It's on his on this link. Here, I'll put the link in the chat again. There is the slides. If you click on the slides, his contact information is on that first slide, and I think his LinkedIn is on the second slide.
Okay, thank you.
So it should be there, and those are up. Yeah.
Yep, I'm always available. I'll respond kind of quick whenever you send me email. My email box tends to fill up quick just because of work, but I always get back to everyone.
Are you in Pittsburgh?
Yes, I am located in Pittsburgh.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And thank you too for getting up on a Saturday and hanging out with us. And I hope to see you at a future meetup. And again, reach out anytime if you have questions or, just want to talk about WordPress. That's what we like to do here. So
Thank you.
okay, thanks everybody.
All right, guys.
Talk to you soon. Okay,
Thanks,
bye.
Bye.